Shanti. Om Shanti. Good evening. Warm welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi, exploring the essentials or the basics of Raj Yoga. And tonight, our topic is lightness and stability, I think. So we'll start with a reflection. Sitting comfortably, I start to focus my attention. It's the feeling of almost waking up, that perhaps I had been going through the day on automatic pilot, going through the motions, fulfilling responsibilities, performing actions, but maybe not fully awake. But in this moment, I feel fully aware of the present moment, aware of my own presence. And I'm able to master my sense of focus in this very aware state, placing my focus wherever I choose. And in this moment, I choose to focus inwards on my own inner world. It's the end of the day, and so my inner world might be more cluttered than when the day began. Many memories of the day, perhaps unfinished tasks. It can feel quite heavy in my inner world. And so I turn on the light. In the very center of my inner world, I experience a tiny point of light, like a candle. The very essence of me, this being of life, this spark of light. And I stabilize my attention there, this tiny spark of light. Everything else, all other thoughts, fading away into the distance, out of focus, just stabilizing on that tiny spark of light that is me. And it brings such a sense of relief and release. All the unnecessary thoughts cluttering my inner world dissolve. Only the necessary ones remain. The important things, the things that matter, the things that nurture the light that is me. Letting everything else go. And just the few things that stabilize my sense of lightness. Remembering everything that happened during the day was meant to happen. All the activities I performed, I did my best. And through it all, my sense of value remains unbroken, shedding light on the few things that truly matter in my inner world and will keep me light. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Welcome to Raj Yoga Essentials. So tonight's session is quite interesting because we weren't really sure if we even had the topic correctly. The topic was actually inspired by the inner fitness session a couple of weeks ago about the balance of flexibility and stability. And so, but I feel like the typo was actually meant to be. And just listening to the commentary and also just the experience I was in as well. There does seem to be this relationship between lightness and detachment and therefore stability. So, what have you noticed that there's a pattern? Usually, when we want stability, we gird down, we try to control, and then there's heaviness. And maybe we don't realize that it's actually creating more instability.
Mm-hmm. So the spiritual or the non-physical tends to operate the exact opposite from the physical. So as an example, this is winter time, the time of year when the roads can get a little bit icy, a little slippery. Knock on wood. Hasn't happened yet in Calgary. We've got clear roads, but in the past, it can get slippery. And so we want to stabilize the car. We don't want the car to feel dangerous and all over the place and very uncertain. So we want stability in the car. So one of the things that we do is try and weight the car down. So the idea, if you put something heavy in the car, then it will have more stability on the road. I think that's a very strong principle and it works in the physical realm. But in the non-physical realm, it has the opposite effect. The more weighted, the more bagged down, the more tied down I am, I'm actually very easily affected and I'm quite unstable because I'm in an ever-changing environment. So I actually want to be very light, very little baggage, and then I'm able to respond, remain stable in unstable or uncertain times. So the lighter I can be, the less tied down or heavy I am, then the more I can, and I think that's where the flexibility, the more I can flex. And that capacity to flex is actually stability. When I can't move, then there is this sense of being very unstable or easily affected, easily jarred by what's going on. So staying light, or that is not really a lot of baggage, creates stability.
It's interesting you were sharing that, physicality with that example of the car. That it's completely the opposite with spirituality. And it was making me realize perhaps maybe we aren't aware of how deeply embedded our ideas, our experiences in physicality are that have transferred in very, very subtle ways of how we respond, react, perceive things, and it becomes quite unconscious that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that this is a huge part of why um, the whole spiritual, going into spirituality, studying spirituality, we have a love-hate relationship with it. In our gut, our inner wisdom tells us that there's something really beneficial for spirituality, but it's going to fly in the face of what has become familiar to us. I remembering, although it's not quite these qualities, but I'm remembering an incident once in a ballet class. You have to balance a lot in ballet class, and we were in the center, so we didn't have the support of holding on to that bar that's attached to the wall. So we're freestanding, and we are doing adage, so slow, controlled movement where you're often balancing on one leg with the other leg, doing various things, etc. And so we got through it, and the teacher's giving correction, and she comes to me and she says, it was about, the idea of trying to gird or weigh down. She says, I notice that your weight is heavily on the back, on your heel. And she says, I understand why you're doing that. I know it feels safe, but it's actually limiting your capacity. So we like to choose the safe, but the safe is also limiting us. And so, what spirituality is trying to do is to free us from limitations, but it does ask us to let go of the familiar. And so, that I think is a bit of a challenge for us. But there is an inner wisdom that says, but that is beneficial. I just have to be very understanding of the fear and continue anyways. So I think again that we have ideas of what will stabilize us, and it's to surround ourselves with the familiar and have a lot of weight and heaviness, etc. And it actually has the opposite effect.
When you were sharing, it's familiar. I feel it starts to shed some light on just what degree of my awareness of being a soul is. I know it's for some of you, you've heard this so many times. It's not just picturing myself to be a point of light. But when you talk about familiarity now, I'm really feeling we're talking about, what are the most subtle things in terms of my perception? What am I used to? And it really asks oneself to check in to see how real is my awareness. What is the quality of my practice then of soul consciousness if I'm trying to revert to what was originally familiar?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when we say you are a soul, we're asking ourselves to stabilize an extremely light thing, so light they're not visible. They're very subtle. And so we like to think, have the thought, I am a soul, while still actually experiencing ourselves to be the body, again, something concrete and physical. And so I really have to check if I have been able to go into that very light, subtle place. And it's a bit of a funny situation because I think the most important thing to start with isn't even is really trust. Um, Whether or not I'm experiencing myself to be a soul, I think is kind of step two. But I think step one is I believe I am a soul. And so very often in the course, um, we have these two lessons. The first being I'm a soul. The second is introducing the supreme soul and my relationship with that being. And what we actually suggest is that's lesson 1 and 2, but there's lesson 0, which comes before lesson 1, which is I trust that these ideas are the truth, i.e., they are coming from God, who we know is truth. So I trust these are the truth. I trust I am a soul. I may not be feeling it, but I trust I am a soul. So it's just a matter of my feelings catching up with that recognition. But if I don't even trust it, I'm going to be fighting against a brick wall. It's kind of like that saying that I'm trying to move along with a handbrake on. But if I don't even believe I'm a soul, then it's going to be very difficult to experience that. But if it's like, no, 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 I know I'm not this body. I know I'm more than this body. I know, then it's simply a matter of catching up. So I think that's really, it's a very light touch because we very often want to say, what's the technique to be soul conscious? Like there is no technique other than you believe you are a soul. That's the whole technique. So even the study has a very light touch. We can't go about it necessarily the way we go about physical things is give me that physical proof that I'm a soul, right? And again, we always want this weight of the physicality to be part of how we process, and that doesn't happen in spirituality.
What you shared is an excellent point in terms of, is there that trust that's there? And it was making me think about, what if one was sort of skipping over that? Not like they're trying to consciously skip over that, but they're really working really hard to try to experience it, and may not even realize that on a deep level, do they really believe it? Because we could still also have powerful feelings in our mind too.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been having powerful experiences before we come into spirituality. We know the power of our mind and imagination can create very convincing experiences for us. So it's something we always want to check. So I think it's, people often mention, wow, there's a lot of information that's shared in the Raj Yoga course. I just came to meditate. It's like, well, the information, we need the information because we unfortunately don't come to the course as a blank slate. So the information really is to give us new ideas to consider. So I don't just use my mind to work with the same old ideas and be deceived into thinking I'm having new experiences. So it's really important to work with the information. And yes, we could say light or letting go. It's the same thing. And do I trust that that letting go, that lightness is going to get me to that end result, that stability? So I even have to be very light, um, willing to let go of beliefs I might have held to this point, which I think we're more likely to do if we found they haven't worked for us. They haven't created that stability.
It's funny because for those who joined for the evening meditation, I thought it was simplicity and stability. So now we have 3 versions here. So
Okay.
for those who
You
are
can pick
listening,
which one you like. You watching, whichever one.
but there was really a deep sense of insight, that there is a connection between simplicity and lightness and flexibility, all in relationship with stability. And just a reminder for those who are watching, that this is Raja Yoga Essentials, which is really why that topic, whichever the permutation was really about the accuracy about soul consciousness. What is my experience of it? So I'm feeling these qualities. And so just listening to you share, I was just really feeling again, inspired. What is the quality of what I'm feeling so that I can have these indicators? And so something else that you had addressed, I was actually going to bring it up when you were sharing about, maybe I'm not feeling it. And sometimes it feels like that could be like a wall that's in the way, a sense of resistance. I know you've shared that phrase before: resist that which resists within you. But when there's that wall, whatever that wall is, it could be fear, it could be doubt, and maybe kind of already answered it, but trying to get over that wall without that tendency to force something to happen, make up something to happen. We really want to feel real. And sometimes that wall gets in the way. And I feel like when you shared about trust, it seems to be a part of getting over that wall without
Mhm.
it being violent.
Yeah, something I really appreciated when I first came to this organization, the Brahma Kumaris, even the name, it's Brahma Kumaris, even though the first student was in a male body, Brahma, it's the daughters of Brahma. So it's an organization, it's the largest spiritual organization in the world that's run, administered by women. And that's not a feminist statement. This is going somewhere in response to your question. It's also an organization that puts mothers in front. And those two statements are never meant to be taken on a physical. What they're suggesting is there are certain qualities that this organization and this study puts in front in order for one to progress. And they're very maternal qualities, they're very gentle, or qualities of purity. And so, sort of again, that heavy handed approach is never going to work. Yes, I need to be firm, I need to be disciplined, just like a mother will be. But behind that firmness and discipline, there is love, because the biggest wall we're going to encounter is ego. This incredible attachment to image is the biggest wall we're going to encounter in soul consciousness. And the number one thing that melts ego and melts fear is love. And I'm not talking, this sort of mushy emotional love, but a deep, deep understanding of what's going on inside. That this, yes, this can be frightening to let go to this degree. Yes, it will take time. Yes, it is challenging. Many beliefs I've held for at least this birth. So I have to appreciate all of that, understand all of that, and that attitude of understanding rather than judging or impatience or disappointment or irritation or punishment. None of those energies is going to melt ego. If anything, they will feed ego. And this is reminding me of one of my favorite Star Trek episodes, which I've shared many times, because again, it's very maternal. Captain Picard, who had a very maternal nature to him. So our Star Trek, I don't know what the name of the ship was, but whatever it wandered into a what you might call a spaceship graveyard. I don't know what else to call it. That was in the middle of this meteorite kind of field, and there are all of these dead spaceships with dead crew on board around them, and they'd wandered in. That really was going to be their fate. They had figured out that all of these ships had wandered into this and were unable to get out. And what every ship had done to try and get out was to throw everything at it, all of their boosters, all of their thrusters, all of their power, very heavy approach. But every time there was so much resistance pulling them in further, draining their life system. And as it turned out, there was a force in this meteorite field that was living off of the energy. It was a bit like I guess, a galactic spider's web, if you will. And so what they discovered is we can't use a heavy handed approach. We can't do what everyone else did. It clearly did not work. And, yes, it's a silly little show, but it always tried to suggest something about spirituality and human nature. And the point of that episode was to suggest that these very arrogant, heavy approaches we have to change doesn't work. It only kills us, it only self destructs. So it will not work in spirituality. And this is why this is an organization that does not put that kind of energy in leadership, very maternal leadership. So, or as we say, soft power, light touch. So what they discovered is we can't use any of that, if you will, more heavy or masculine energy. We can't use any of that to try and get out of the situation. We're going to have to use a very light touch. And what they literally did is kind of hang glided their way out of there, trusting their own inner intuition, all of these more maternal, if you will, qualities. Raj Yoga, self transformation, demands the balance of such a light touch, such a gentle, understanding approach, coupled with determination, focus, concentration, discipline. And this is very difficult for us to conceive of, a discipline that isn't heavy or a firmness that isn't rigid. It's very challenging for us to think of a lightness with that discipline and that determination. That's exactly what's required. So we say that the sort of maternal qualities are in front and the others are the backbone. So I've got this discipline, this stability, this concentration, but it's a soft approach, a soft power, as we say. That takes a while to wrap our head around. And until we do, we just swing from one extreme to the other, right? So we say, oh, I'm going to, and then a few weeks go by. It's like, I need a holiday. I can't keep this up, right? And so we kind of just swing around until we sort it out, and that's okay. We eventually do. In order to survive, we have to. And these are really harnessing the true qualities of the soul. One of the eternal qualities of the soul is balance. So we do figure it out.
Listening to you share, I was thinking about the trust in that which is authentic,
Mm.
the trust in that which is pure. For there to be pure intentions, it seems like that is lies in the face of expectations, desires, and ego. Because so when you were sharing, I was thinking about my biochemistry um, uh, teacher when I was in university, and she was just so light about everything,
Mm.
and but very inspiring. I'm not sure what it is, and I was just remembering her when you were sharing. You were inspired to do better
Mm-hmm.
in class. Um, I'm not sure what it is, but it makes me think about a leader, someone who has that kind of lightness. But there's obviously much more depth in that that inspires others to be able to be better for themselves. And it's a very different feeling than someone who's controlling and where's my stuff,
Mm-hmm.
trying to control things, do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like such a trust that if something doesn't get done, to let it go. Because I feel that's where the girding down, the controlling, the ego, the image, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And but the lightness, the
Mm-hmm.
flexibility, the simplicity, our ideas about those things have so much to do with apathy, primitive, and being
Mm-hmm.
lax and careless.
Yeah, and that's again our sort of time with physicality that led to those kinds of experiences around those words. But in spirituality, they're exactly the opposite. I'm remembering a retreat very long time ago at one of our retreat centers. There was a weekend program, and one of the sessions, the souls were asked to consider what one quality they felt that it wasn't just that they shared with God, that they created that bond with God, but also they felt that God would almost use them for, if you will, as an instrument. And everyone was coming up with beautiful things like love and kindness and sweetness and forgiveness. And there was one soul that said humor, sense of humor. And I so enjoyed that because A, we don't often think of God. We think of him as this very serious being who, but that's going to be the lightest being ever, the supreme soul who has to, dealing with pretty serious stuff, but super, super light, great sense of humor, very, not mocking. That's what we've done with humor is we've become very cruel. That's not humor, that's cruelty, but a very light touch, very, very light. And, we've sort of discovered in this spiritual journey that it's the souls that are able, as we say, to have gentle, laughing eyes upon themselves, are able to be light, slightly entertained by their own craziness, that have survived. It is a serious thing, self transformation. It's the most profound thing I will ever do. But if I'm very harsh and rigid and unforgiving, I will not get far and it will be a very long haul, and I might even give up on myself, right? So having really light feelings. And so the ultimate light, of course, is when I start to experience myself to be light, then it naturally activates those feelings. Because what's happening is light means I'm becoming free, liberated from ego. Ego gives me a sense of self worth that is so heavy and so challenging to sustain. It's so externally born or informed. It's really heavy. This sense of, it's not even self worth, it's just heaviness. It's a really heavy load trying to feel valuable under the rule of ego. But when I experience myself to be a soul, that self-respect that comes from spirituality is it's so easy to sustain it, so that it's not dependent on anything external. So this is part of what being light means, is that my sense of self-worth is now coming back to the self. So nothing really is that heavy or much a nothing is a greater priority than the value of the self. Nothing. If I have that, then I have the number one priority. Everything else is fine. So by switching that sense of one's own value, things become very light. It's when my value is invested outside that I'm very sensitive and very heavy about things, because I'm so sensitive. So the lightness comes as the most important thing in one's life. Their own sense of self-worth returns home, and we become very light. So I think that that's a huge part of what's happening to us.
It's interesting then, because it helps us to understand then what is the basis of that stability, especially if we have such very physicalized ideas of what that even looks like. And sometimes I even notice in myself, you hear someone who's very stable, and you think it means they're also very serious.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like a misperception as well. Then
Yeah, it's funny, during meditation, I was thinking a bit about, because one of the things that makes us very heavy, again, because of ego and seeking approval, is expectations. So we step into roles or relationships, and they can become very laden with expectations. I expect you to show me love this way, or I expect you to fulfill your responsibilities this way. And then we start to internalize those, and we think this is the way I'm supposed to do it. And you mentioned the word authenticity earlier. Now, yes, it might be that I should fulfill that responsibility. But if I'm not doing it from an authentic place, if I'm simply doing it for show or approval, I am heading towards a disaster. Like, it will never work out well, right? If I'm doing it to get someone's approval or impress someone, and this can be very subtle. I may not even know that's happened. It's just that this is how I should do this, or this is how I have to do it, or you can feel the heaviness, because my authenticity is being starved. It's not an all part of the situation. Yes, I did the thing, I did it well, everyone's happy, numbers were high, but I was not really present. That's a very heavy feeling. And I'm saying, I'm thinking of a soul who I was interacting with recently, who's going through a very difficult time. It's not difficult, but a big change, and they're finding it quite challenging. Um, and what they've discovered, one of the first things they discovered, and I know them a little bit, quite, I've known them for a while, and they're a very authentic, open hearted, big hearted person. But again, when we're in certain roles or responsibilities or relationships, somehow ego just has this disconnect, that desire to belong, to be valued. It just does really distorted things to us, and it's very subtle. And they didn't even notice that somewhere along the line they lost their authenticity. And it eventually destroys, it has the exact opposite effect. I thought I was pleasing someone or I was showing love, but I was not myself. And so, yes, the person might be pleased for a while that you're doing what they want, but you're not yourself. It's much nicer to do these things authentically yourself. So, back up the boat a little bit and sort of ignite that light, that authentic sense of self, and then see how I express love, how I fulfill relationships, how I fulfill responsibilities. But let me show up, not ego, not image. That's very heavy. And it's heading for instability, it's heading for chaos. Either now or down the road, it will if I am not authentic. So I need to spend time again fueling that light that is me. Being, this is the number one priority. If it's not fulfilling expectations in the short run, then that's okay. That's okay, because in the long run it will be, I think, really honest success, true success. So it's something we really have to check in on. It damages our heart a lot when we don't do things from an authentic or spiritual place. We're not that light. So we really have to be sensitive to that.
Thank you, Judy. Just one last thing, just looking at the time.
Mm.
But I know you just shared about it. It does feel like one who has to let go of perhaps doing things in a habitual way that keeps one stuck, maybe keeps others stuck, whether it is trying to seek approval, um, causes you to sell yourself short, so to speak, to be able to be okay with that. And there might be things might look a little weird, or someone might be disappointed in you. But again, back to the authenticity, that there is a very clear intention I need to have. It's not to reject others, but to really shift things on the inside, for greater gains for everyone.
Hmm. This is one of the beautiful things about being told I'm a soul. It comes with a package. And it really is, I mean, the one soul I think that we can trust completely as we're learning is, of course, the Supreme Soul. And when that being looks at us and says, "You are a soul," what they're actually validating, if you will, or reminding us of is the intrinsic qualities of every soul. So, yes, in your life, someone might have come along and said, you're not very loving, or you're not very clever, or you're not very patient. You can kind of ignore them. Because when the Supreme Soul comes along and says you're a soul, and the intrinsic qualities of every soul is loving, truthful, pure, powerful, blissful, harmonious, light, happy, this is what he's saying is trust. These are your true qualities. And the more that you sort of nurture that light that you are, the more those qualities will stabilize or emerge in your own time. Don't look at anybody else. Don't look at what anyone else is doing. Don't try to do what anyone else is doing, because they have to come from within you in your own time. So it's a very beautiful relationship between the soul and the Supreme Soul, because the Supreme Soul is constantly reminding us, yes, you are this as a soul. You are loving as a soul. You are truthful. And we just keep sort of being watered by that reminder. And slowly the real thing starts to emerge in my own time. So I think that's really important because otherwise we can sort of start to doubt ourselves. It's like, oh, I was impatient again. Oh, I didn't, and so, yeah, we want to do these things from an authentic place, which is why we want to keep that relationship. But just keep listening to God, whisper that to us. You are this, you are this, you, as a soul, you are this. So I think then we trust our own timing, our own journey, and it's coming from an authentic place. We're not rejecting anything. We're just allowing ourselves to reach there truly, honestly, authentically in our own time.
Thank you, Judy. Reminds me of The Emperor and the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I believe we ran out of time. And we can share about this all night. Such a beautiful topic. But
Whatever the
thank you.
topic
Whatever the
was.
topic was, it turned out to be very, very powerful.
Yes.
And so, anyways, I suppose we should end with a little reflection.
I imagine just for this moment that my inner world is like a bureau. Many, many drawers, many memories, many beliefs, many different ideas. And each drawer is packed with so much baggage. And then there's one special drawer in my inner world that hasn't been opened for a long time. It's actually locked. And the key to open it is my own readiness to return to my own true self, to let go of all the layers of the image, ready to return to the light. And that readiness opens that drawer inside. And there's a single object in that drawer. It's a jewel box. And with the hand of my mind, I open the jewel box. And inside is a single tiny jewel lying there on that velvet bed of the open jewel box, a tiny jewel, just like a spark of light, so small. And yet I can feel so precious, so incredibly precious, because that tiny jewel of light is me, long forgotten, locked away. But now I have returned, ready to spend time reuniting with the self, this tiny jewel of light that is me. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Well, I found it was very eye-opening to be able to see on a deeper level what is spirituality and maybe these misperceptions we have, misconceptions we have that we don't realize are driving things. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Judy, about upcoming sessions.
This is always a challenge. Will I remember? So it's Thursday. So coming up on Saturday, Inner Fitness, and I know the theme is speed. So Inner Fitness on the Zoom platform. That's going to be 2 to 3 p.m. on the Zoom platform. So you'll need to go to our website to get that URL for how to join on Zoom. So that's 2 to 3 o'clock. Inner fitness topic is speed. And then I'm so sorry, it's on Saturday as well. Yes, 12 o'clock. Just before that, 12 o'clock to 1:30, also on Zoom, we have a workshop, which is the resilience within. So that's 12 to 1:30 this Saturday. And then inner fitness at 2. The following day, World Meditation Hour. So that's going to be Sunday, 6:30 to 7:30, and feeling that this is so valuable in these times to really take care of the self, fill up with those inner resources, and automatically they will be shared to a world hungry to experience peace and light. So that's this Sunday, and then back to drop in meditation's regular schedule on Tuesday and Thursday of every week until the end of the year. And I will announce right now that we will have a New Year's program online December 31st, 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Notice will come out hopefully in the next day or two. Om Shanti.